you're always on stage kind of in society. So like how you act in public is like you're on stage versus like maybe in your home is like off stage, and like how you present yourself. There's something there.
Welcome to A Musical Mind. I'm your host, Richard Raymond II. I'm a recording engineer, music producer, and multi-instrumentalist located in Colorado Springs, Colorado. In this podcast, we'll talk to a variety of musicians about the music-making process, as well as the life and mindset that have helped them find success as a musical mind. Thank you for being here. Here we go. Hello, everyone. You're listening to episode 3 of A Musical Mind with Richard Raymond II. Today's guest is Chuck Wilson, the frontman of the Chicago jam band Lost Pyramids. For those of you who don't know, Lost Pyramids recently put out a record called Traffic in Space, which I had the pleasure of mixing and mastering. I also mixed and mastered their previous record titled Monsters Under My Bed. Working with these guys has been awesome because they're fucking excellent musicians, and all the recordings were captured at Lubeck Studios. So everything came in sounding awesome as is, and I really just kind of got to put the finishing touches on. There was no repairing needed to be done on my end or anything like that. Like out of the gate, this shit already had the vibe. So check both those albums out, particularly Traffic in Space, because that's the one that's freshest on the shelves. And yeah, you'll hear that they have a jam band influence. They're big fans of the Grateful Dead, and they really do a great job of bringing their own flavors into that jam band scene, and are like one of the coolest acts to see live. They're improvising, but they're also fucking Loctite. Everyone is just stellar at their respective instrument, so do check them out. I'll link to the show notes to check out Lost Pyramids. So in today's episode, Chuck and I had a nice chat. We talked about a shared love for improvisational music, namely jam bands and jazz. We also talked about Chuck's experience making an album of 61-minute songs, which he did with his Lost Pyramids members during the pandemic. That was kind of when I first caught on to them, which you'll hear we talk about in this episode. But that's a super cool experiment, and it sounds like a great learning experience as well. And we also kind of talk a bit about clothing and, you know, how different people have different approaches to what they wear, and how what we choose to wear says a lot about who we are and what we're trying to say. So without further ado, let's listen to this episode with Chuck Wilson of Lost Pyramids. What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Musical Mind. I'm here with today's Musical Mind, Chuck Wilson, the guitarist, songwriter, singer of Lost Pyramids, the jam band out of Chicago, Illinois. Chuck, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for taking the time to be here. It seems like you've been traveling a lot lately. I don't know if that's like usually you just kind of doing nature trips or playing shows, or a combination of the two.
I've been seeing a lot of Grateful Dead shows recently, Dead and Company. So that's where I've been. Yeah,
Got to catch them while you can, right? This is
exactly.
the
I'm a
final
Bob
tour.
Weir fan. So yes,
No one
until
can
the next
see
one, of course.
Chuck is wearing a We're Everywhere shirt right now. Does it say anything
Yes.
else?
That's it. Straight and to the point.
Yeah. So I guess that's a good place to start. If anyone's heard Lost Pyramids, you can probably hear some of the Dead influence in there. What is your relationship with the Dead look like? When did it begin? You know, do you have Deadhead parents, or was this something you kind of picked up later on in life? What's the scoop?
Well, I like the Grateful Dead musically are like, they mean everything to me pretty much. I draw a lot of inspiration from their approach, like I feel like their whole mindset about music, more so than anything technical about it. Anything that happens beyond that is I think coincidence. But yeah, like my parents are relatively big Deadheads, so
Okay.
it was around a lot, but I really kind of came into it on my own. Kind of just had heard it my whole life a little bit, and then once I really started listening, I think I and started playing music too. I think that was a big kind of it happened at the same time type thing, and being able to play like that's fun music to play. I think if you play a lot of different types of music, that improvisational style is was just struck me as something fun. So that was kind of my relationship with it. And then I started going to various kind of Grateful Dead offshoot shows. And that was
Mhm.
really my whole world kind of got flipped on its head in a weird way. And like just live music, just that's a representation of everything that I think is good, in the world a lot. Just experiencing that. So yeah, the Grateful Dead are everything in terms of like emotionally my connection to music too, I think.
That's awesome, man. And so when did you first pick up the guitar? So I can kinda map the timeline here.
Sure, yeah. I started playing guitar when I was like 10
Okay.
and I played it for 2 or 3 years, and got okay. Then I kind of stopped for a year or 2 in my like when I was like 13 or so, and then picked it back up, kind of had a rekindled interest in it. And when I picked it back up, I kind of really approached it more seriously. And yeah, I think and that was about the same time that I kind of started getting into the Grateful Dead. So I think it was like this whole new world of music that kind of in conjunction with just like growing up and everything else. Um yeah, so then around like 15, 16, I really started getting into it. Then yeah, it was just it took off from there really.
So were they I don't remember the timeline well enough. Were they playing at that point when you would have been about 13, or were they
So it was like a bunch of different offshoots essentially. So the first Grateful Dead concert, quote unquote, Grateful Dead concert was a group that was called Further at the time, and it was Bob Weir and Phil Lesh were the two like original members,
Mm,
and they had a just like a great musicians, a lot that still play like Grateful Dead music. But yeah, so that was like my first experience into it, and then it was like kind of just a bunch of different offshoots. And then it went to the Fare Thee Well concerts, like the 50th anniversary. And that was like, I was all in at that point. I was totally sold. More so, like the music was great and everything, but it was really the community, I think, and like the feeling of being a part of something
yeah,
that really, I think, it was like a counterculture, but it was such a big community, like it was easy to embrace at that time in my life. So
yeah.
I
No, that
did.
makes a lot of sense. I know personally, um, I think my first exposure was pretty much in high school, and, a friend of mine shared Unbroken Chain with me. That was, like I probably had heard some other stuff before that, but that was the one that made me interested. Um, but then honestly, it was mostly my friends were all becoming big fans, and I just kind of, like, piggybacked, I guess, more so than it was like a thing that caught me personally. And I did become invested, particularly like when I was fresh out of college, because my roommates at the time were like all they were all deadheads. And yeah, it was cool. We all played it. The songs are simple, and then there's all this room to do whatever you want in there. And so it was just kind of those were a lot of the songs that we would just play when we picked up a guitar or whatever. So I've been to one show which was where the hell was it? Was the one Alpine Valley.
Yeah.
And I was with most of those friends that I mentioned and my girlfriend at the time. But anyway, so that's the only live show that I had been to. Since then, um, I still listen a fair amount. I go in phases more so than is like my the way that you are describing the relationship
Sure.
that you have with them.
Yeah, and, like, it's one of those things that, like, if you get it, I don't know, that's so cliche, but, like, if you get it, you really, like, are all in, and, like, then yeah, so there's, like, different degrees, obviously. I'm
Right.
all in, and I think that, like I think being a musician has a lot to do with it, though, even if you aren't really super into the music, I think that I always feel like a large portion of the people there, like, have picked up a guitar in some
Yeah.
vicinity, and, like, you're understanding the complexity and the nuance of like, the music and,
Yeah.
like, people appreciate that. It's a certain type of person, I think, for sure,
Definitely.
that yeah, then whether how deep you go, that's up to you, I guess.
Right. Like, yeah, I feel like I totally get it, but maybe I'm not all in. However, I feel like the elephant in the room for me is jazz. I listen to jazz pretty much every single day, and it has that spirit of improvisation, which I feel like is kind of the big, like, thing that they have that, separates them from most genres of music other than jazz. So, I feel like from that
Yeah, and I think
standpoint, I'm totally down.
and that's, like I think that the way I feel about almost Grateful Dead music, how, like, it's an approach, like, I feel like the Grateful Dead looked at jazz in that way, and they, like, heard jazz, and they were like, "Holy shit, like, you can do it anything," like, kinda
Mhm,
thing, like, it's kinda mind-blowing, and I think that yeah, like, I also love jazz, so I do
mhm.
think that it's an approach, it's like a total musician thing, like,
Yeah,
to appreciate what's going on.
and it can be hard to undo. I know I've been having a hard time, like, playing or even writing things that have, like, a determined melody. There may be implied melodies, but it's almost like my hands can't even play it the same way twice in a row. Like, it needs to be this ever-changing thing. The other thing that I listen to on a daily basis is, like, ambient music, primarily, like, Brian Eno or Harold Budd, those types of guys where it never repeats, but it's the same fucking thing for an hour straight. It's like this kind of weird, like,
Sure.
and so I think just being constantly inundated with those sorts of things, it's like I've almost forgotten how to just like, these are the chords, this is the melody, and like it does not satisfy me anymore. I'm wondering if you know at all what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know what you like, and I think that that's an interesting thing because I feel like improvisational music is almost inherently slightly self-indulgent as musicians, like, we play it for ourselves, you know? So, and that's why, like, jazz has standards, so it's like
Mhm.
almost everyone kinda knows the melody. So it's like, yeah, you do the melody at the beginning, let them know you know it, and then kind of y go away from it.
Right.
But, yeah, how close can you keep it, and, like, weave around it? So, in a like, when I'm writing, I think jazz just kinda has that influence where it's, like, too much repetition for me, like, I don't like it to a certain extent, but I know that, like, structurally, songs need repetition, especially,
Right.
like, so it's striking a balance, and I think that comes down to, like, absolutely no science involved, it's kinda how you feel about a certain thing.
Mhm. Yeah, no, definitely. I would agree with that. And oftentimes, uh, I feel like my songs have probably gotten more simple. It's almost like you can have the same chords going the whole time, but you're like never note by note repeating the same melody. Whereas before it was like had these determined melodies, knew exactly what I was going to do, but wanted like the most. I'm not saying they were outrageously complicated, but I was trying to like push the
Sure,
envelope with arrangements at the time as like an up and coming person who's still learning how to play even.
sure.
So it's just interesting how all that shook out. But so you and your group Lost Pyramids, you just put out a new record called Traffic in Space. Do you wanna take a second to chat about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we just put that out. You mixed it and mastered it, and, Yeah, like, it's our 2nd album that you've mixed and mastered for us, so, um, I don't know what to say about it. It's definitely a very, we recorded it the first record that we did, Monsters Under My Bed, was a lot of, like, live stuff, like, live recordings, and this one was a little bit more, I think, um, polished, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. I think we took more time on, not necessarily more time in the studio, but more time kinda thinking about what was happening a little bit more and step back from it, and yeah, I think it turned out really good. I was happy with it. A lot of the songs on it's got 11 tracks, and it's got a decent amount of instrumentals. I feel like we always do some instrumentals, and it's got a lot of long songs, I feel like, unintentionally sort of kind of fell into that, and
Mm.
yeah, I don't know. A lot of the songs I've had for a long time, and they're just now like, so I'm happy that a lot of these songs are out because they're old to me, and I almost sometimes get sick of them and like kind of cast them aside, just mentally compartmentalize it. But I do like these songs a lot. I almost forget them sometimes. So yeah, I'm really happy that they're like out there.
Yeah, totally understand that. But I never would have guessed. I never would have guessed that any of this was old because I know um, there's at least a couple songs. I don't know all of them, but that were like written by other members of the band. If was that the case with the first record too, or was that all stuff that you had written?
So I think on the first record, it was mainly my material with like everyone kind of contributed their own little piece to each song to make
Sure.
it, Lost Pyramids. And this one was the same way, except for a couple of tunes that were Larry wrote the song Laney with Drew and I kind of helping out to kind of polish it up and finish it up. But then Traffic in Space Part One, that was totally Drew. That's like a solo piano piece with some like
Right.
string pad shit in there. But yeah, like that's all Drew. And then the other ones, yeah, like most of them are written by me with like I really don't, I feel like I don't restrict anyone to, put their own kind of flair on it. Like it's not me playing all the instruments. So I there's only so much I can say. I always say like I'll have a drum beat in mind or I'll have like a piano thing in mind, but those guys could play it a lot better than I could, Like I'm a
Yeah.
guitarist through and through.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I fell into that trap. The I recorded a record, found people, and I had the expectation that they were gonna just play, pretty much exactly what I had recorded, and it took a bit. I mean, I did try to make that happen, and then that was part of, like, after that group kind of disbanded just because college ended, we transitioned into me being out of college, which coincided with me kind of getting into the Dead and having friends who were into the Dead, meaning they're coming into the band, and I was just like, "Okay, I'm gonna completely flip this on its head, and we're gonna take these songs that, like, I've written or recorded, and I have no fucking clue how it's gonna sound. Like, let's" like, just gave people complete freedom, and that made everyone else more invested. It made the shit better than what I could record, and, that was what made it super fun, so I can attest to what you're saying here also because I've spoken with Larry and he spoke very highly of like your ability to I don't even know if he used these words, but it was implied like your ability to lead, but like make sure that people have their own autonomy to kind of do what they want to do. So yeah, I think you've done a great job with that.
Yeah, and I appreciate that sentiment. I feel like I definitely try to do that. And I think part of that too is like if there is a specific thing, a lot of times you don't even know what you are thinking, I feel like, for a certain part until you hear someone do something that's right or wrong. And
Mhm.
so like either way kind of helps you narrow down what you're looking for and kind of lets everyone come together on it. Like if there's something specific that I specifically want, um I feel like you gotta make that evident or else no one will know. But
Right.
sometimes it's like it's something that you want that you don't even know you want. You hear it in your head, you don't even know it's in your head because it's just so there that you kind of assume anyone else would play that too, kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it's so like I said, it's not like a science, I feel like. So it's just it
Right.
varies from day to day kind of thing, and it's
Yeah.
fun in that way.
Yeah, there's times where you have something in your head and you're kinda curious to see what the other person is gonna do, and there's times where they do something completely different than what you had expected, and you're like, "Oh, shit, that's amazing," and then there's other times where you're just like, "No, please don't do
Right.
that. I no
Yeah.
longer wanna play this song when you were doing that on top of it." So, yeah, I agree with you. Not a science.
And that's a weird thing about it because I feel like it all comes down to, like, communication and, like it's like a social aspect to music in a weird way on, like, a very micro level because it's small group kinda stuff, so that's why, like, it's important to be able to communicate musically and, like, just be able to say what the hell you're thinking, I feel like, just in general in life, but, when you're working with the same people over and over on things, it starts to
Yeah.
gotta be able to speak your mind, I think, so.
Yeah, which not all musicians are great at doing.
No, I think uniquely, musicians tend to be kind of bad at it sometimes because we speak with our instruments often or with our creative endeavors. So we forget to actually say what the fuck we're thinking sometimes, maybe. I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's why it's great when you can just play it, just communicate it in that way,
Right.
and I think that's possibly why musicians tend to hover around one another because it's like, "Oh, like, I can tell you what I'm feeling in a way that I can't tell someone who can't play it back to me," you
Sure.
know? And
Yeah, and, like, I feel like music a lot of times expresses something that you don't need to think about it as much. You don't need to think about, like, what it is, whereas, like, if you're trying to find the words, you kinda need to narrow it down a little bit more.
yeah, no, that's a good point. You're just we kinda talked about this, oh, no, that was a different podcast, so I was on my wife and I's podcast, but I was talking about, how when you're quote unquote "creating," you're really just, like, translating. So, from that standpoint, like, when you are talking, you're trying to find the words to put to the feelings that you have, whereas when you're playing an instrument, I think more often than not, you're hearing the melody and you're just like you're translating because there's less room for if you're hearing it clearly and you deliver it clearly, like there's less room for am I making any sense here? Like whereas when you're searching for words on something, there's you want to find the right words and there's way more combination of words than there are notes. That's the best way to put
Sure,
it.
yeah, yeah.
So it's more of a direct translation. Obviously, you got feel, you got swing, whatever. But I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because like, to translate a melody, I think it requires a certain amount of instrument know-how, like, you have to be able to operate the instrument, I think, so that's, I think, why, like, improvisational music is so intimidating at first because you need this, like, operational know-how of this thing that is so abstract before you can, like, take this dive, and it's like, "What do I play?" And anything. That's
Mhm.
kinda scary, but that's ki like, yeah, I don't know, scary is good in a musical sense, I think,
Sure.
to push yourself forward, on in that way, so it all feeds back.
Do you feel like you have the ability to, like, I'll say 99% of the time, hear something and like directly spit it out as you heard it, or no?
I think that, like, almost never happens for me. I feel like it's often
Really?
a struggle, like, it's happened before. I feel like when it comes to the instrument, like, it's like listening to your own head, I feel in a weird way, like, to almost to put the instrument down first and kinda hear it. To hear it first, then but that doesn't really happen for me. I'm quite impatient, so if it doesn't come quickly, I sometimes I don't know, it's varies sometimes, and it depends what I'm trying to do, you know? Like, if it's a jazzier tune, sometimes I'll want a more elaborate melody, so I'll need to kinda sit with it, and but whether or not I'll end up writing the song is kind of dependent on how quickly it comes, so, you know, I if I get frustrated, I or bored or whatever, I don't know, I'll kinda take that as a sign that it's not coming almost. So I guess
Mhm.
in a weird way, I'm answering yes, but I think I'm answering no because it's like, if it's not flowing and coming out easily, then I usually won't even mess with it.
It so you're primarily referring to, like, the writing process? I think, right? If I'm not
Yes,
mistaken.
yeah.
I wanna know more about, like, "Alright, we got an 8-bar jam here in this song."
Oh, in
Like,
a
are you
jam?
are you kinda
Yeah.
singing in your head and it's directly coming out, or is this more of, like, you're kinda relying on that sounds like a negative connotation because I don't think one's better than the other, but you know your scale, and so you know what you can hit, and you're kind of just seeing what it's giving to you? Or are you, like, being intentional with every note, or is it back and forth? Does that make
I
sense?
think yeah, it's a lot of back and forth, I think, and I think that's where, like, I'm good enough at the guitar, to lean on that, you know,
Mm.
like, and use it as like, okay, yeah, I can do this scale for a little bit. And I think that's where like listening comes in because maybe I have a certain thing to start it off, like an idea to kind of start off a jam, just kind of set the mood. But from there, yeah, like if someone does something interesting and you want to go a different direction, you got to go that way. To not go that way would be a shame.
Right, yeah, I guess, like, when I was describing all of that, I was leaving out the fact that usually you're listening to the other people, and
Right.
sometimes you can just be, trading off of what they're doing. Like, I know in my group, Old 45s, where I'm playing drums, so often, um, I will just be picking up on it. It's usually a rhythmic thing because that's all I can copy. But so often he'll do one thing and then the next bar around, like I'm doing it. And we've done that enough now to where it's kind of like he'll do something and then I'll do it and then he'll know to do it again and then we do it together 3 times or
Right.
whatever and
Right.
then we leave it and get on with our lives. But um yeah, there's something about just improvisational music. It's just it's the fucking best. And I love that approach to doesn't need to be music. Like my wife's a yoga instructor and she's someone who she can show up and know exactly what she's going to do, or she can show up and just like fucking we're going to start in fucking child's pose and I have no idea where we're going and just ride that wave and do the same kind of thing. And like I've been in those classes and I know when someone is kind of, teaching, like when they know exactly what's going to happen and you also can it's a different feel when you're like, "Oh, we're just fucking riffing right here." Like I'm not riffing with you. I'm just following what you're instructing me to do, but like it's a different feeling and I just love that feeling no matter the medium.
Sure, and I think that, like, that's what separates like, for musicians, I think, or, like, really anything, like, it could be a comedian or really anything where you're in front of people, like, it separates like, you're going to if you're buying a ticket to see improvisational music, you're going to see the person as opposed to, like, you wanna hear the music they're playing, but, like, you're not just looking to hear them perform a specific song, like, you're hearing that person put their specific how their mood of that day into what they're playing, I think.
Not even that day, that moment,
Sure, sure, yeah,
yeah.
and so that's what's, like I think that's what separates, like, a great like, I don't know, like a great performer from a great artist maybe or some sort of
Yeah.
dichotomy of
No,
similar things.
no, I agree, and I don't want there to be like this I do feel like I've developed a strong preference, but I will say that, like, when I can go out and see a group and it's clear that everyone knows exactly what they're gonna do and they can execute it to, like, this incredible degree, like, that can be just as compelling. It's just a completely different thing. Like,
Sure.
my friend John, who I am gonna have him on, his group, Home Entertainment, much more of a group like John's a fucking robot back there, and he might be my favorite drummer to watch because he plays with such intention and like passion. And part of that is because he doesn't have to think. And I would say that, like, you're kind of letting things come through you when you're jamming or whatever. But I'm personally, like, I'm always trying to think about what I can do next, which almost kind of plays into the tempos at times. Like, with a little bit more of a laid back tempo because you have time to kind of be like thinking and then doing, thinking and then doing, opposed to like home entertainment. A lot of their stuff is much more fast paced. There's like no thought whatsoever, all muscle memory, and just like so much passion, so much drive and force. And I'm like, fuck, dude, like that is amazing too. So I just want to make sure I'm not sounding like there's this strong hierarchy, even if I do have a preference most days.
Yes. I second all your sentiments, and I've first of all, I'll say I've seen Home Entertainment. I know those guys, and like, yeah, like their show's insane in a totally different realm of what I prefer, I think, and much respect. And I often go back and forth between like in my own head, like which is harder to do, like the perform note for note
Right.
kind of thing or the improvisation. And I think it's like there is no correct answer, but I think
Mhm.
seeing and thinking about it is like a worthwhile endeavor, I guess.
Yeah. No, and it can be, I think it's beneficial to put yourself in places from time to time where you're going to see the one that isn't necessarily your preference because it can kind of like shake up your perspective and give you something new to move forward with. Like, oh, maybe there is, even if you have a song and there's one section of it where you know exactly what you're going to do, and that's what it is every time. um I don't know, I'm always just inspired when I see one of their shows, or a group like that, but it's usually not what I seek out.
Sure. And like, yeah, I think that it's interesting what even classifies as like improvisation because like I call ourselves a jam band in Lost Pyramids, but yeah, like we do plenty of stuff that's like, I mean, obviously we're singing the same melodies every time, and
Right.
we're doing this, so it's like we have a chunk of material where we do a lot of improvisational heavy. That's where the energy comes from, I think. But yeah, like I do like acoustic music too, and like singer songwriter kind of stuff too, and like that I love that just as much, you know. And it's like a softer side kind of my tastes, but yeah, like yeah, like I don't want to be shitting on repetition, I guess. Like I
Sure.
appreciate like a good chorus is a good chorus, obviously.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
why and that's what's great about music is like you're not like a hypocrite for liking two different types of music or anything like that.
No, not at all. They both are welcome. And yeah, I just want it clear. I don't think one is better than the other.
Just disclaimer there.
Yeah, because I don't know. It's hard. Like it again. It's just difficult for me to even do the repetition at this point. So how can I sit here in my right mind and like say that what I'm doing is harder? Like because I almost you know what I mean?
It makes sense.
Like, even though, like, that is what I used to only be able to do. So, like, intuitively, you're like, "Oh, well, it must be harder to do what I'm doing now." But I'm almost like, maybe I lost something along the
Sure.
way, like, I don't know.
Yeah, and like that's why like the solos I'll get nervous about are the ones where it's like if you miss one note, you ruin the solo kind of thing.
Right.
Like so
Yeah, well, that's
yeah,
true too. I didn't even think about that component. There's so much more liberty to fuck up when you're playing something that isn't predetermined.
I agree.
Yeah.
What's up, guys? Taking a quick pause here to talk about my sample pack, Laid Back and Groovy Guitars. I did this sample pack with 5-Pin Media, the British sample pack label. And in this sample pack, you will find 376 live guitar loops, 144 guitar one-shots, and 142 lap steel one-shots, all drawing on an influence from psych, jazz, funk, and soul, and inspired by artists such as Krungbin, Goat, Fela Kuti, and Herbie Hancock. All these loops are both DI and the amp signal with printed effects and are distributed over the BPMs 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, and 120, all evenly distributed over 4 different keys, giving you a wide variety of moods and feel to play with. Guys, there is a ton in this sample pack. Check it out. Get all the guitar you need for your beats. If you're a drummer, you want to play along to some guitar loops, whatever you need, this thing has it. I spent a shitload of time on this. Click the link in the show notes. Once again, Laid Back and Groovy Guitars by 5-Pin Media, available on loopmasters.com. Go and get it.
All right. Well, I did want to ask about the COVID days of Lost Pyramids, because that was kind of when I first became a fan. So we played a show. I don't know what year that was. This was before the pandemic. Must have followed each other or whatever. And then during the pandemic, you guys were the most active band on my feed, making these little 1 minute little
1 minute, yeah,
songs.
60-second songs.
And I loved the branding and the logo and everything, and that was kind of what really caught my attention. So I want to hear a bit about what that was like.
Yeah, so they're all out on the streaming services if you want to go listen to these 60-second songs. But so we got an hour of 60-second songs, an hour of material. And so it started as, I was fortunate actually during the COVID times because everyone was kind of isolated, living alone. I at the time was living with the band. So we were all hanging out all the time. And
I didn't know that.
yeah, so 3 of us were living in the house, and one other guy. Then the 4th member, our drummer at the time, Jin, would come over all the time, and he was living alone. So we were all together a lot during COVID, and it kind of, I didn't really get this isolation kind of thing during COVID. I was lucky in that regard. I consider myself so. It was really the shows stopped, and we were gigging a decent amount at the time, nothing astronomical, but it was definitely a big shift. And we were all stuck at home, everyone. And so I think we started this project right as COVID. It was a coincidence that this project started.
Oh,
And
really?
it was the week, we had been talking about it for a while, but the general idea was my goal was to get us to play more. So I was let's just get together and let's improv, jam songs. We'll record the whole thing, and we'll be able to find a minute, and we should just kind of release a minute of songs every week. And it turned into we ended up writing minute songs, and
right, yeah.
So
okay.
yeah, they are very few of them were actually jam based, which is kind of the irony of the jam of the week. And it turned into so we were writing songs, and then it turned into we were making videos. And Brian Flynn, who was our bassist at the time, and Jin really they fell deep into this rabbit hole of making videos and doing all the, I don't know, the aesthetic stuff that kind of made everything look good. I was more so I was kind of more so writing music and bringing ideas, and so were they. But we definitely I was more so heavily into the music, wanting to jam, and they, it turned into let's do these minute songs every week, and turned into kind of goofy videos. I feel we kind of leaned into the funny kind of comedy. So it turned into something that I wasn't trying to do, which was an interesting thing. And our plan was to go on forever. Eventually, we all kind of got tired of it, towards the end, and we were we want to write a 90-second song. What if we wanted to do something longer, shorter, or so we kind of boxed ourselves in, and it was tough to keep it up, man. I'll be honest with you, there were days where it was we would release them on Thursdays or something, and it was Wednesday night at 9:00, and we were fuck, we have to do something, we have to think of something.
Yeah.
So, and that wasn't every week, but it definitely towards the end when we finally finished the 60, we decided to end up we'll just do an hour of minute songs. That was kind of it seemed like a proper kind of bow on the end of it.
Mhm.
And it was kind of like, okay, like let's move on to the next thing. And the next thing ended up being the album. So like it got us really good at like, I think writing though, I think it like made
Yeah.
us deliberate in the way that we played, and it also gave us like the videos, and we gained a lot of like not a lot, but like we kind of built a little bit of an online following during that period,
Yeah.
like, and people were watching those things, like some people. So it was fun, and a lot of the songs, if you were to go through, like you'd hear like what is now like a full song, or
I gotta go back.
yeah, yeah, go back, and it's
Okay.
interesting so that, like, you can kinda see some ideas, and a lot of them were, like, I had written the song and we needed a jam of the week, so, like, I was like, "Let's use this section," kinda thing,
Right.
or vice versa. Sometimes it was so it was fun, it was an experience, and, like, we've talked about doing something similar again. I don't know, it's just, like, the weekly commitment, as silly as it sounds, to make a 60-second good product on a weekly basis it became a chore kind of.
Absolutely. I'm still trying to figure out if I'm gonna be doing this weekly or biweekly, but I know that either way, I'm trying to get to probably 10 episodes recorded before I begin releasing, so I just can have this cushion.
Sure, and well, that was like always our struggle. It was like, let's just hammer out like 6 of these things, and it like we just never could do it. It was I think it just required too much of everyone, and like then at that time it was like things started to pick up a little bit, like people were kind of going back into the office, so like
Mhm.
we weren't all hanging around all the time anymore,
Right.
and so yeah, it was just like we we had to pace ourselves, honestly. So if we were to do it again, I definitely would like once every 2 weeks or once a month, and it's like just so you don't commit. It's like because there's other things you wanna do, and like
Right.
so
Yeah.
it's tough. It's tough to create content. Respect to content creators as much as I sometimes may shake my head at them, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, so I work on podcasts now, and, the amount of shows that I have has shrunk down, and we've also they're almost all of them are weekly, except for the clients who don't honor the fact that they're supposed to be weekly. But, it's been about a little over a year that I've been working for this company, and I'm now in this stage where, like, the upload time to the release date has been increased to 9 days. It's not actually 9 days for me because 'cause I'm kind of like the first, uh person who has to get going. So like we'll be done on day 9, but like I need to give the art team time. I need to give the video team time. We need time to review it. We need internal review and then like client review and then scheduled. Anyhow, all of this, I have a point here. The past couple weeks, it's been like I don't have these deadlines over my head every day, if not every other day. It was pretty much every single day. And it's like, it is a huge mental weight off my shoulders or my head, whatever you want to call it. Like I will be like, hey, like I'm gonna play piano for 15 minutes before I begin this episode because it's not due on my end for 7 fucking days. Like I'm still probably doing the same amount of shit, maybe some days a little bit less, but, like, it's so different when it's a choice, like, "Oh, I'm gonna work on this thing," and I can let it be the second thing, second priority in the day, and let the first be, like, just me even if, like, a lot of times it's only 10 minutes that I'll just, like, get up, play guitar before I go do something, but that is, like, a huge shift in my life than like if I take 10 minutes right now, I'm gonna make my day fucking suck because I need every minute because this shit has to get out tomorrow. Like, and it's been amazing to be like, wow, it doesn't have to be that way. It's not really what we signed up for, but that's what the job required. And that is not what it requires anymore. And I'm just like, this is so much fucking better.
Yeah, and I think that like something you said before we started was kind of about like your whole idea about like creatives doing things and like um kind of like how you're told that you're not gonna like get rewarded for all the effort you put in. And I think that like that kind of pressure is like I don't even know how. It's like an interesting tie into what you're talking about, I think, because like that when you mentioned that to me, I think that people kind of forget like to create for this like if no one's watching, would you still be like creating kind of thing? And I think for like a lot of like indie musicians for sure, and like I'm sure podcasts and like comedians, every kind of entertainment and like it's like you have to really love what you're doing to like do it. And
Mhm.
as soon as you don't, it's like really tough. So I think it kind of narrows in what you like having that experience. I don't know how that ties in. I don't know. Was that kind of like a tangential thought?
That's okay. No, it made sense. I thought like we can tie back into what I was saying. I was talking before we hit record about one of the things that I want to hear from people is we're all musical minds here. So they may not all be musicians. There may be someone who is just a producer or something. I don't know. I'm not boxing it entirely, but we're working in this creative field. And culturally, this is the thing that like no one can do. You know, those people they're not real humans, those famous musicians. You know, like even a couple years ago after I've like established myself somewhat as an adult, like I've had an ignorant uncle of mine like murmur like, "Well, you're not George Harrison or whatever." And I'm just like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" That's besides the point. So what we were talking about was what what makes you like there's got to be some sort of mindset that goes into like I know that everyone's saying that this isn't going to work, but I'm going to go do it anyway. Then again, you did reveal that your parents are deadheads, so maybe that's not type of like environment you were in. I will also add that I wasn't necessarily hearing that from my parents either. That was probably like other people. Um, but anyway, that's like kind of what we were trying to talk about.
Sure, and I think that like on top of that, like I've played enough shows out on like kind of local music circuit to like I've played a lot of shows where there's like no one there or like no one paying attention and like that just experiencing that is something everyone should experience in their life I
Mhm.
think because it's like it kind of hurts a little
Oh
bit
yeah,
and like every time it kind of hurts just a little bit but it's all about how you bounce back like to have the feeling I think is totally normal but, like, how quickly you can bounce back from it, and I think that kinda determines, like, for me, I'm kind of approached it like, I'll do a solo acoustic gig, you know, and no one's listening. Like, I've had a gig where the only person sitting there, you know, while you're playing walks out, and you're literally playing to a room of no one, kinda like, finish the song, kinda take a break at that point, what else are you gonna
right,
do? And it's like but I'll think to myself as much as that, like, is a bummer and a drag, like, but it's also like, you're getting paid, like, you're out here playing music. I'd be doing this in my living room most likely
right,
otherwise kinda thing. So,
right,
I think that separates, like, people who are musicians by trade versus, like, people who are musicians, like, in their soul kinda thing.
right. Yeah, totally. I guess this seems like a good time to ask, like, what do you do you have, uh, not an end goal, but do you have goals for the band? How I don't know what you do. Like, do you have another job? What is your how you keeping the lights on?
Yeah, I'm just doing music right now, so, like, that's how I just try to get as much gigs as possible, and it's up and down a little bit, but yeah, just, for the band, in terms of that question, yeah, like, I like, my real goal is just to make music, like, with Lost Pyramids, like, we're trying to get people who wanna come to see us, you know, like,
Mhm.
that's the goal, so, like, I'd love for the band to succeed, I think that I'm realistic and I don't expect to, yeah, like, be George Harrison, like
Sure.
your dear uncle.
It was
might
just a
wish for you.
stupid comment. I was like,
Dude,
the what do you even mean?
yeah, we've
I'm like,
we've like
ah,
the Beatles comparison. It's such an interesting thing because I think anyone saying that doesn't understand like a modern music industry.
right.
Like I don't
Yeah.
think that that exists anymore. Like I think that there's
Mhm.
mega pop stars for sure, but it's not like yeah, like we the band and I mean we often talk just like musicians. I talk about like the state of like a live band, like in
Mhm.
terms of like the economics of it, you know, like
Mhm.
it's a very interesting conversation, kind of a whole different realm. But
We can go there though, because I have lots of thoughts on it.
sure, like I mean, so like for me, I love playing with the band. I'd want to be doing that like as much as possible. But right now, like I'm trying to get more solo acoustic gigs because that's what pays. And I
Mhm.
had a guitar teacher who was like, it's a lot easier to divide the paycheck by one. And like it's kind of a shitty mentality, but I think it's like I don't know how else someone would make it in like a local music thing type of scene and, like, even in Chicago where it's, like, a lot of opportunities, like, you gotta find them. So,
Mhm.
it's every gig counts, I think, and, like, even if it's not a great one, it's a gig kind of mentality. I think that's kind of what I my approach is on it, you know, you gotta do it before you decide it's a shitty gigs type of thing, and
Totally.
it doesn't mean it won't be shitty.
Yeah. I wanna interject here and just say, I was back home in Illinois. Guess I still call it home, but I would call here home too. It's one of those weird things. But, Lost Pyramids played in a basement at the Cooley Underground, which I call it a basement. This place is dialed in. They got it
Yeah.
real dialed in over there. They do live streams and the audio is excellent. And there's a bunch of people over there who put in a lot of work. And I always try to make sure it's Dave, right? Dave's the guy who,
Dave's running, like, lights, yep, and
and
Brian, shout
Brian,
out to Brian.
yeah, Dave and Brian, like the unsung heroes. Every time we're there, they're so kind and they really do a great job. And to do that as frequently as they do, just because they want to, kind of ties into everything we're talking about. Anyhow, that show at this point, three of the Lost Pyramids members are people who I have played with in Lime Forest. So I'm, have a couple beers in me. Think there's some J's being passed around. I'm sitting on a couch and I'm like right behind the keys, Drew, and it's Nate's birthday, and like you guys were on fucking fire, dude. I'm like, this right now, like what I'm seeing, I could have paid $1,500. This ticket is worth $1,500, and I'm right here on this couch in this basement for free. And these are like my fucking homies. And I had a moment of like, damn, my life is cool, like and as a spectator, just like these are really good friends of mine, and they are like blowing me the fuck away right now.
Well, thank you so much for the kind words. I appreciate it. And
Yeah.
like I
Uh,
think that like that's what makes music, not to get too philosophical here, but like that's what makes music so great because it's like you're talking about that story and it's you're talking about a feeling. And like I think
mhm.
that's what it's all about. Like sad, happy, angry, mad, I don't care what the feeling is. It's all about having that feeling. And like music can get them all at once or it can get them all specifically and like so yeah, it makes me happy to hear that because that's what it's all about in my opinion. And like I consider myself a musician, like, and that means more to me than just like going out and playing music. I think it's like being able to appreciate that sort of thing, and like I'd be happy with my like musical career, quote unquote, whatever that means. Like even if it, you know, like if you can do that to a couple people along the way and have them happy for 5 seconds, 5 minutes, whatever. Like I feel like that's all good. Like you're doing the right thing.
Totally, totally. So I wanted to share all of that, and then I kind of wanted to. I've made some big life shifts within the past couple of years. To go back to talking about like the state of being a band in 2023, and I think COVID probably played a bit into this, but I began having this like fantasy of like having some group that could function entirely like online, like with whether it's like a virtual chip jar or just having like some dialed in online thing where you can give like this constant stream. Um, and I think part of this is because like having a family has always been something that was important to me. And I've also become someone who's like I'm pretty health conscious in the typical, like touring situation kind of can make that difficult. I also like to have fun. So if I'm in that situation, it's gonna be fun, 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 fun. And being away from at that point my potential children. So um yeah, I've just kind of gone this completely different route where that's not my goal anymore. I do have a band, we play around town. I don't expect that to take us anywhere. That's just so I can get out and experience some of what you're talking about. But in terms of me trying to make a career, like I have not been doing it live. Part of why I'm starting a podcast, full transparency. I'm mixing music. I've tried to kind of lean into that role. And then the music that I'm making is winding up moving more and more towards into like the wellness space. Like I want stuff to be played in yoga classes. I want something that like someone could get a fucking massage to. Um, because I feel like that's an industry that like has a demand for a certain type of music, which I also just love. And I almost feel like I have a greater purpose and sense of belief in like that type of shit than I do in like going out and being a band who is trying to fill seats.
Yeah, and like I keep saying the same. I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over, but that's okay. Like, I feel like that's what's great about music too, is like all these little niche things that can kind of like, kind of scratch your itch and like for all these different things. And yeah, like they're all equally valuable and
Yeah.
like, yeah, they exist. They serve a purpose. Like, I don't know. So yeah, like that's really the beauty of it, I think, is that it serves a purpose, all the different, like, things you can do. Like, if you're just hitting a drum, I think that that's, like, cool too, you know? Like, if that gets you going,
Mhm.
like, whatever, man, like, go for it.
Yeah. It's to me like what I just described, and it probably is just because of what my skill set is, but that is less daunting to me than trying to be. And I don't even know. That's why I asked what you guys are trying to do. But the previous me was like, "Oh, I must be in a band. We must get signed. We must tour. Then I can live." Like that. Until then, I can't live, and if that doesn't happen, I'm just gonna die, I guess. And like, I literally felt like I was dying kind of before I made this massive life shift here because I did not know how to imagine myself. I had no purpose aside from that. Um, but anyway, so that's, like, intimidating to me, so when I kind of found this, like, "Oh, like, there's shit that I could do, and, like, I can be home, I can have a wife, I can have kids, and I can still do music, but it doesn't have to be I don't have to be a rock star, basically." Like, that was the only
Sure.
way I could view it, and I don't know how possible the avenues that I'm taking now, like, would have been 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, like, I think that that's a good point, and I think that, like, I like to, with myself, be kind of specific with what I am looking for in terms of it kind of helps me clarify things for myself in terms of like musical goals. And yeah, like I guess like that whole thing of like being a rock star, like you're not George Harris. Like I feel like that kind of thing like crushes people, man. Like, and it's so sad to see it because like for myself, it's like, yeah, I would like to be a rock star. I suppose it would be fun to do that type of sort of thing, but that's not like what I'm in it for. I feel like it really never has been, but I also live in the reality of like that would be cool. Like I'm not gonna say
Mhm.
no, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's like finding this thing of like Like for me in Lost Pyramids, like I'm happy that I was able to find people who want to play the music that I write and, want to contribute to it and want to bring me their music. Like that's what it's all about. So like anything that happens beyond that, like, yeah, like I think goals, like I don't have a lot of control on whether or not like the right people hear our music and we get signed and stuff like that. And I'd love it all to happen. That would be great. But that's certainly not the driving force. And I think
Mhm.
that's like it's tough for people who don't do it to get it, I think, too, like, I'm totally down with failing, too, I think that that's, like, I'm totally that's like, if we go out and play a bad gig, yeah, like, it's not good, like, I don't like it at first, but I'm totally down for, like, bad shit to happen, like, in a totally,
Mhm.
like I feel like you have to be, or if you're not, you're only gonna do good things, and you'll never know if it's good before you do it. So, like, you're gonna really limit yourself in, like, with this little, like, perception kinda box you put
Mhm.
yourself in, and that's no good. It's
And
no good.
when you're open to just total failure, I think that opens the door for, like, the true magic. Like,
Sure.
you can't receive true magic. I think to go back to the jam band versus, predetermined band, I don't what's the alternative?
Yeah, just banned, right?
Yeah,
Like
I would say that probably universally the writing process is like a magical thing where you're kind of like getting a thing, figuring out what it is, but to have like that sense of inspiration or it's the writing process in real time on the stage. And I feel like the only way to be available to that is to like be okay with complete fall on your face failure.
Sure. Yeah,
Um,
it's like the ultimate, like, taking the leap kinda
yeah. It,
approach.
I'm now gonna like I don't know. I think a lot about like clothing or uh just like presentation and how there to me there's a correlation between like people who have their hair like tight or slick or whatever you want to call it and like this type of like focus like here's what I'm going to do like this is what I'm all about and if it's not like that I'm uncomfortable versus the bearded scraggly kind of like it to me those are like big indicators of just the way someone thinks and I think that that's like a factor as well because I think that the that personality comes before the music, uh, if that makes any sense. Like,
It's interesting because like, Frank Zappa used to talk about how, kind of a n I'm certainly paraphrasing and probably twisting his words a little bit, hopefully not, but, like, something along the lines of, like, the way that you wear your clothes is, like, the ultimate projection of what you want people to think you're like. So,
mm,
like, it's kinda that, like, there's, like, a sociological term called, like, dramaturgical analysis where it's like you're always on stage kind of in society. So, like, how you act in public is like you're on stage versus, like, maybe in your home is, like, off stage, and, like, how you present yourself. There's something there about, like, yeah, how you wanna be perceived, and I think that, like, yeah, like long hair and a beard is like very counterculture-y, so like it's a little bit of rejecting the norm, I think. And like I
mhm,
think rock music, especially in American history, rock music is very much counterculture, just like the Rolling Stone, even the Beatles. Like to think that
mhm.
the Beatles with their clean cut look were like counterculture-y at the time is just like
Yeah,
crazy.
it is funny to think about. But yeah, I don't know. I'm always looking around the world and trying to yeah, learn about people or even just make preconceived notions because that's what we humans do about people based off of like what they're wearing, and it's kind of a fun. And to me, that's just like what going to the store is. all about.
Sure. Yeah, and it's like within the constraints of like your economic conditions, obviously, but it's like the one thing you get to choose, like how you look, kind of. Like you can't
Right.
choose your height, but like you can grow your hair out and you can like
Yeah.
put on a colorful shirt, if you
Yeah.
so
Yeah. And you have to choose something.
right.
Everybody has to be clothed in our society. So that's like the one thing. Here's living proof for everyone out there who says like I'm not creative. Well, you have to be creative to determine what you are going to wear. Unless you are someone who has someone picking out your own clothes all the time.
And even then that choice says a lot about you,
Like,
more than choosing your own clothes would.
yeah, I agree. So, but everybody, everywhere, in my opinion, unless you're wearing a uniform, which is why I take issue with uniforms, um, is being creative on a daily basis. Whether it's conscious or not, you're doing it. Now, it's very conscious for me, even though yeah, I don't know. How about you? When you are going to pick out your clothes in the morning, um, what goes through your head?
I must say, I'm a big fan. I wear a lot of the same clothes, honestly. My go-to outfit is the white t-shirt with the black jeans. I think that says all you could really say about anything. But so yeah, like it's interesting cuz I think it was Einstein, I think, who it was either food or clothes. I think it was food. He ate the same thing every day, so he didn't have to think about that. So he could totally think about like science all the time. So like
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah. I've
certainly
heard
not
that.
comparing myself to Einstein, God. So let me preface it with that. But like with my clothes, I make a joke that it's like my dream closet is I open it and it's all white t-shirts on one side and all black jeans on the other. So
Really?
like
Oh, that's
but I love
wild.
my tie-dye too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. That's
depends.
wild. I wouldn't have guessed that. I wouldn't have guessed that. It's all mostly just colors for me. Like I kind of wear the same shit often, but it's I'm always thinking about colors. Like what? Yeah, I usually wear a hat every day. I work at home, so I'm usually wearing some form of joggers. I've got like 3 or 4 pairs of those. I've got like I don't know, maybe 6 different hats, and then it's all like plug the shirt that fits in with some sort of color correlation or color say if they don't need to match exactly, one needs to lend itself to the other.
Got to
And
compliment.
yeah, which is what I think about every time I put clothes on. However, now like our morning routine is me I have an 8-month-old daughter and it's gotten to this point where she wakes up and she has to shit. So when she wakes up, we potty her right away and she takes a shit. The whole reason I was bringing that up is because right after she's done shitting, she wants to get the fuck out of our room. And I'm usually not like clothed. So often I'm just picking up what was on the ground when I went to sleep. So I'm not getting that like daily pick out my clothes type of start to my day where I'm kind of like, who do I want to be today? What do I want to feel? What colors am I feeling type of thing. But anyway, I think I want to move into my final thing here. So I'm starting a playlist called A Collective Musical Mind. You can follow it. I'm Richard Raymond II on Spotify, and this is a public playlist. And I'm asking each of my guests if they have uh, an album, EP, or just one song by an artist. Could be modern, could be an old artist that you're just like really vibing with right now.
Hmm. So I'll pull right off the top of my head.
Mhm.
So I've been listening to a lot of Bob Dylan. As I said, I like the singer-songwriter stuff. So let's go with the song Idiot Wind by Bob Dylan off of Blood on the Tracks.
All
Phenomenal
right,
song.
I'll throw it in. I'm gonna do it right now because I don't know that one, and we're gonna watch this baby grow, hopefully for years to come. And I'm excited to keep referencing that and to keep drawing inspiration from everyone else. So, Chuck, thanks for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure. Um, we've done lots of corresponding via text over the past couple months working on that record, but it's good to have a full blown conversation with you. Um,
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
so
Appreciate
thanks
it.
for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Hell, sounds good to me, man. Thanks so much.
All right, that's a wrap. How did you dig that episode with Chuck Wilson? I dug it. I had a great time talking to him. And I think my favorite part was Chuck talking about how he's not afraid to fail. And it's my belief that those who are not afraid of failure are the ones who wind up accomplishing the most impressive things or cool things, whatever you want to call it. Insert adjective there. Chuck's a great dude. He's also a phenomenal guitar player. He plays with just like great discipline. I admire the way he goes after each note with such intent and strength. Honestly, the man's got strong hands. And yeah, check out Lost Pyramids if you've not already heard their stuff. They're a great band. Once again, they have two full lengths that I have worked on called Traffic in Space and Monsters Under My Bed, and also those 61-minute songs from the pandemic that we talked about in the episode are also available on various albums wherever you like to stream music. So if you'd like to follow Chuck on Instagram, you can at Chuck Wilson 23. You can also follow Lost Pyramids. That's at Lost Pyramids Band. And I'm also linking to the Lost Pyramids Spotify in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you found this episode inspiring or informative, something useful, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks for listening to A Musical Mind. I have been your host, Richard Raymond II. If you, your band, or your friend, or anyone you know is in need of mixing and mastering services, I offer that remotely. Shoot me an email. That's richardraymond2@gmail.com. No spaces, all spelled out. You can also give me a follow, Richard_Raymond_II on Instagram. Shoot me a DM. We'll get to making some cool shit. And please like this podcast, share it with a friend, give it a 5-star rating. It ain't too hard to do. I appreciate you for being here, and I'll see you next time.